Good afternoon.
Shalom.
We are learning the book of Shmuel Aleph. We are in chapter 17. We've got one of the exciting parts of this book with David HaMelech fighting Goliath, David fighting Goliath. And what we learned in chapter 16 was how Shaul had suffered from melancholy, and Shaul's servants told him you should have someone play music in front, and they ended up hiring David, the son of Yishai, to play music. And we mentioned that Doeg, the person, Doeg, who was a great scholar, but yet not righteous at all, very wicked. He really was trying to create jealousy between Shaul and David, and it seems because he was jealous of him because David HaMelech seemed to always win every argument in learning Torah. It says Hashem was with him. Hashem was always with David. That means whenever there was an issue, a question, of David HaMelech seemed to always be right. And Doeg was himself jealous of David, and ultimately he's trying to create a war between Shaul and David, and so he wants David HaMelech to be hired to be the musician. And that's in chapter 16. And the way he presents David, it sounds like he's being so nice and giving him praises, but really what he's doing is trying to create jealousy. So he's saying, oh, there's the son of Yishai, he knows how to play. He's a mighty man of valor, man of war, understands a matter, handsome, and Hashem is with him. And that's the words, Hashem is with him, how they understand from that verse that it means that halacha kemaisai, the halacha always followed David. Yes, Ben.
So that sounds like Lashon Hara, but saying good things.
Yeah, you never know. It's surprising how to what extent you could even say the most beautiful things about someone, and you're doing the worst Lashon Hara ever, like Doeg is doing here. It sounds so good. That's the way.
The Chafetz Chaim says you have to be careful with praise, that it can be Lashon Hara or Rechilus, because if it stimulates something bad, it's the intent. Again, it's what your purpose is.
Which means if you say something good about someone who they hate, that you're causing them to want to say something bad. You're instigating people to fight back. But this is a different scenario. But you're right. The Chafetz Chaim says this rule, but this is a different scenario where Shaul doesn't really know David HaMelech, so he's not going to fight back, but he's going to become jealous.
Right.
You're going to create a little jealousy here. If he praised him, so much in areas where Shaul would be jealous and insecure of himself, may cause him to become insecure. In any event, Shaul sent messengers to Yishai, and David came and he stood before Shaul, and he loved him. He became his armor bearer, and whenever Shaul was depressed, so David HaMelech would play the harp, and Shaul would feel relieved. And then chapter 17 began with the Plishtim want to start a war again. Now they don't seem to learn their lesson. We just had a miraculous win earlier with the great miracle of Yonasan going and started causing all the Plishtim to lose their whole. They lost their whole. They weren't composed anymore. They were so bewildered and they were running, and the Jewish people just came running after them. After Jonathan went there with his helper, and they created, they wreaked such havoc, and the caused Hashem to create like a tornado type of a feeling, a fear, a huge fear amongst the Plishtim. So we just had this win, but maybe that's why the Plishtim are so hurt that they want to try again. They're not giving up. Yes, sir, Robert.
I'm sorry, Rabbi. I've been knocked off the internet 3 times since we began. Where are we on what page?
Oh, we are in chapter 17.
Okay.
Shmuel Aleph. Let me just mute everyone because there's some noise. Let me try to mute everyone. Okay, so yeah, we're in chapter 17. I'm just doing a little review from where we're holding, and I didn't start yet. I didn't start the new, from where we're up to. So I'm just going over. So we were talking about, no problem. We were talking about David fighting, about to fight Goliath. So what happened here was the Plishtim want to start a fight. They want to fight the Jewish people, and the Plishtim are on one mountain, and the Jewish people are on the other mountain, and there's a valley in between them. And there's a man by the name of Goliath who's huge. He's 6 cubits, which could be from 9 to 12 feet tall. And in one span, which is a half a cubit, a zeres, which is means so we'll have to add a foot. So somewhere between 10, 9 3/4 feet and 13 feet tall. Yes, Ben.
I think maybe they're thinking, since one Jew killed so many of them and made all the trouble, they'll put out the best of theirs, and maybe this guy is going to show up and Goliath will kill him.
Right.
That's why now they want the fight of one-on-one.
They're trying our method. That's a very interesting thought, Ben. Thank you for sharing that. That's a very interesting thought. And not only that, but their giant is huge.
Yeah.
Nothing compared to Yonasan was just a regular guy. Yes, David.
Yeah, I was going to say that there's 2 different views of the size. One is a cubit, which is measuring from the elbow to the middle finger, I think it is. It's like 1.5 feet. And one is a cubit of Goliath's cubit, his measurement of his elbow to his finger, which is going to be much, much more than 1.5 feet. So there's 2 different views of how tall he was.
Wow, that's very nice. Thank you for sharing that. Is that from the Ma'am Layers?
That's from my memory over the years.
Oh, the reason I'm glad I asked you, because there is a Gemara about the size of Shimshon, and I think that's what you're remembering, not Goliath.
I thought I was remembering the size of Og Melech HaMoshe. Maybe that's what I was remembering. But I thought
that's also true.
Yeah,
there's
so I thought right.
But I don't know if that would apply to everyone. Right. There is
the giants. Regular people are 1.5 feet. A giant is going to be maybe bigger than that. It depends if it's a universal cubit or a specific cubit.
Right. I don't know if you can take the license to draw that that statement from Oig Melech HaBashan to say all giants are measured by that. Maybe, I don't know, unless you have a source. That's why I asked you. I do know that there is such a concept that it's that it mentions that, and I think it might mention something similar about Shimshon. But in any event, I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can use that here unless you find the source. And this was in verse Dalid, and so on, in the regular commentaries, I don't see abroad, at least in the regular commentaries, any such view.
But you also hear about giants from the Meraglim.
Yes. Okay. But we don't know that there, whenever it gives a measurement, if it always means that you follow their.
No, I'm just saying that's
Yeah.
when they mention it.
Okay. In any event, we'll keep our eyes open if we find such a view. So the verse that we'll start is. We're going to start on verse 8. Chapter 17, verse 8. He stood and called out to the battalions of Israel, said to them, "Why are you going forth to wage war? Am I not the Plishti, while you are the servants of Shaul? Choose yourself a man and let him come down to me. And if he can fight me and kill me, we will be slaves to you. And if I defeat him and kill him, you will be slaves to us and you can serve us. Why make a whole war?" Which is a little surprising why he's saying this. This is not the common way of fighting a war. And obviously he's saying this because he wants an easy win. And if he fights one person, it's a good chance, a much better chance than fighting the entire Jewish people. But still, it does seem a little surprising that he's saying this. Now, obviously, he's very arrogant and wants to show off. And he's publicly shaming the Jewish people that they're cowards and they aren't ready to fight. But in any event, this is what he's taunting the Jewish people. And as we'll see, he taunts them every single day. Now, he says this concept, choose for yourself an ish, a person. Now, where do we find the word ish? We find Hashem ish milchama. We find that when it says the word ish, it means Hashem, which means let's see your God. Let's see your God's power. Choose for yourself a man, meaning let's see if your God actually will cause you to win. He was trying to question Hashem's ability and Hashem's power. He was undermining our faith in Hashem. And he was saying, choose for yourself a man. Let's see what your God can do. And the verse continues and says, then the Plishti said, I have disgraced the battalions of Israel this day. Give me a man and we will fight together. And Shaul and all Israel heard these words of the Plishti, and they were terrified and greatly afraid. Now, one of the things that we know is that Shaul lost the spirit of Hashem. So normally, had he still had the spirit of Hashem on him, he would not have been afraid. But we know that Shaul lost it. We read at the end of the last chapter that it was that Shaul had lost the spirit of Hashem, and it says that David got it. It says in verse 14 of the last chapter, "Veruach Hashem sara me'im Shaul," that Shaul lost this Ruach Hashem, and he was afraid. Uviasatu, and Uviasatu ruach ra meis Hashem. He got this spirit of melancholy from Hashem, and so the idea is that. The point is that Shaul is now afraid of this Plishti, and the whole Jewish people are as well. Now, the reason why Goliath is able to have these 40 days where he's going to taunt the Jewish people is because his grandmother was none other than Arpa, who was married to a Jewish man, a great Jewish man. Kilyoin, Machlain and Kilyoin were married to Rus and Arpa. The children, the Ruth is the one we know about who converted to Judaism and became a very righteous lady, the great grandmother of David. And Arpa was the great grandmother of Goliath. And Arpa, when she left, she walked 40 steps to escort her mother-in-law. And then she said, I'm going back to my hometown, to my palace where I'm from. And she, because she walked 40 steps as a reward for her grandson, great-grandson, Goliath, was merited to have 40 days that he would be able to taunt the Jewish people. And that was a reward for his great-grandmother. Now, in verse 12, it says, David was the son of a certain Ephraimite, Ephrasi man from Bethlehem in Judah. A certain Ephrasi Hazemi Beis Lechem. Ephras was the area where Beis Lechem is located, Rashi tells us. And so, if you remember in the verse, that she was buried in Ephras, he Beis Lechem, in the verse in Vayechi, he Beis Lechem. Bareha Baderech Ephras, he Beis, I think. Boid Kivras Eretz Lova Yefrasa. Anyway, Rachel is buried in Ephras. So that's the term Ephras here, is a place, and this is so David was the son of a certain Ephrasi man from Beis Lechem, which is Beis Lechem in Yehuda's territory. His name was Yishai, and he had 8 sons. In the days of Shaul, the man was old and would come among the elders. Yishai's 3 oldest sons left home and followed Shaul to war. The names of these 3 sons who went to war were Eliab, the firstborn, then Avinadav, the second him was Avinadav, the third is Shammah. But David was the youngest. Just the 3 oldest followed Shaul. David would travel back and forth from Shaul's presence to tend his father's flocks in Beis Lechem. So that is the story of David, how he's not constantly with Shaul playing the harp or being his arms bearer, but he is traveling back and forth.
So is Avinava the same as the 2 people with the same name who are identified in different ways? Like that the ark was with Avinadav for 20 years?
So that's a different person.
Okay.
But good question. So so David was the youngest of the family, and these 3 oldest were actually with Shaul in the army, and David would travel back and forth, and now the verse says David, verse 16, the Plishtim would approach, or the Plishti, I should say, the Plishti, this Plishti man would approach the Israelite camp early morning and evening. He presented himself for 40 days. So as I mentioned, he was really trying to harass the Jewish people, the Jewish camp, for 40 days. And he specifically the morning and the evening. Now, what does the morning and the evening remind us of? It reminds us of the Shema, which means that he wanted to interfere to ruin our prayers, our Shema prayers. And it's interesting because the Shema is one of the mitzvahs that it says that as long as you have the mitzvah of Shema, you don't have to worry about going to war. One of the opinions about returning from war, people who are afraid. So one of the opinions is even if he just has the mitzvah of Shema, he doesn't have to worry. And here it's saying that this man would come specifically, this Plishti, a giant, would come specifically in the morning and the evening to ruin, to scare us, to confuse us and interrupt us from trying from reciting the Shema in its proper time. Now, Yishai 17 verse Yud Zayin. So Yishai says to his son David, "Please take this ephah of toasted grain." Ephah is a certain measurement, and take this measurement, the ephah of toasted grain, and these 10 loaves of bread for your brothers, and hurry to the camp of your brothers, and bring these 10 cheeses to the captain of the 1,000. So inquire after the welfare of your brothers and obtain a report of their welfare. So this is what's happening here, is that Yishai wants to give them some provisions for, and he's sending David, who's not currently with Shaul. He was tending the flock, and now he's being sent to the camp. Now, the interesting thing about this verse is that it says, the last words in the Hebrew is, V'es aru basam tikach, you should take their, find out about them. But the word aru basam has different meanings. And there is a similar word in the Torah where Judah says, Anoichi a'arvenu, I will guarantee the return of Benjamin. In the Torah, we have the story of Joseph had the king of Egypt, viceroy of Egypt, wanted Benjamin to be brought before him because he wanted to find out if they murdered Benjamin or sold Benjamin, just like they sold Joseph himself. So he was testing his brothers. He says, I want you to bring Benjamin. And Jacob did not want them to bring Benjamin down to Egypt because Jacob was very nervous that something would go wrong. So Judah stood up and said, I will guarantee him, Anoichi a'arvenu miyadi tevakshenu, I will guarantee that he will return. I will guarantee this world and the next world, that I will give up this world and the next world if I don't bring Benjamin back. And here it says, David's father Yishai tells David, take aruvasam, this guarantee, take this guarantee. And what that means is that the Medrash brings this is not my own insight. The Medrash explains that the point is that Judah seems to always help out Benjamin. And in the Torah, we have Judah helping out Benjamin, where Judah guarantees Benjamin. And Yishai now tells his son, you're from Judah. You must help out Benjamin. Who's Benjamin? King Saul. Go help out the war. Go help out what's going on. Help out Saul. Help out King Shaul. Shaul HaMelech is from Benjamin. So you got to keep up the tradition of Judah helping Benjamin take their guarantee, aruvasam. And the Medrash continues, and it says that Hashem said that you did this twice. I am going to keep up this guarantor element, this unity between Judah and Benjamin. I'm going to put the Beis Hamikdash right in both of your areas. And it turns out that even the Mizbeach, part of it was in one of their territories, and the other part was in the other territory, meaning that the Judah and Benjamin is where the Beis Hamikdash is in their territories. And it says even after the Jewish people were exiled, Judah and Benjamin were not exiled. They were exiled much later. Now, the verse continues, and it's verse 19. Shaul, they and all the men of Israel were in the Terebinth Valley, Emek Ha'elah, and fighting with the Plishtim. David arose early in the morning, left the sheep with a watchman, and set out as Yishai had commanded him. He came to the encirclement, and the army was going forth to the battle line, shouting battle cries. Israel and the Plishtim deployed battalion facing battalion. David left the baggage that was upon him with the keeper of the baggage and ran to the line. So what happened here is that David HaMelech arrived, and he wasn't expecting that they're already at war. And he was planning on just bring them provisions, but they were actually deployed. And when he arrived, they were deployed. He's like, okay, I can't. Let me leave the provisions with the guy in charge over here. And he runs to the line and to see what's to be part to see what's going on there. When he arrived, he inquired after the welfare of his brothers. Now, as he was speaking to them, behold, the champion went forth from the Plishtim, battalions, and Goliath, the Plishti of Gas, was his name. And spoke of the above words, and David heard. So in other words, he said the same thing that he was constantly saying, that why don't someone just come and fight with me? We don't have to make a whole war. All of Israel, all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, they fled from him. Now, what's interesting is it says, Oile, Ha'ish, yeah, 1 second. It's really in the next, it's really in a different pasuk.
23.
Verse 25, it says, Ha'ish ha'ila hazeh. This man, so it's both. The man of the Plishtim, Oile went forth and went up. And the understanding is that he's in the valley, but he's so confident that he's even starting to go up on the Jewish mountain because he's so confident in his power. And this made the Jewish people even more frightened. The men of Israel were saying, have you seen this man who goes forth? He goes forth to disgrace Israel. The king will enrich whoever kills him with great wealth and give his daughter to him in marriage, and he will free his father's family from the royal service in Israel. So what's happening here is that David was not there before, he just arrived, and there was an announcement that the people tell David now that he arrived, that the people are telling David, they said, this guy who's going forth, if anyone wants to fight him, King Shaul is willing to give his daughter to marry, and he'll also make that person wealthy, and he will also free the family of any royal service. So the so David is thinking, he knows he's supposed to be king, and Shaul at the meantime is still king, and David HaMelech is thinking, well, at least the Radak explains it this way, that he's thinking, well, this would be a perfect opportunity for me to get into becoming king without it being a messy, this would be the simple way. I'll be the son-in-law, so it would be easier for him to rise to power if he was the king's son-in-law. So that was, this is what David HaMelech is thinking. So David HaMelech, he hears them, he hears what people are saying, that what the king said. And David says in verse 26, David spoke to the men standing with him, saying, what will be done for the man who slays this Plishti and removes the disgrace from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Plishti that he disgraces the battalions of the living God? So David HaMelech wants to hear again what they're saying, even though he heard it already. He's asking them to repeat. What is this reward for someone who does this? And the reason he's repeating it is he wants to enter into the conversation of offering himself. So he's asking them, what is it that they'll get? Oh, maybe I'll be interested. So he's trying to enter into that conversation, and so he's asking them to repeat, even though he knew this already. He wants to be able to say, "I'd be willing to fight," but he wants it to come from their request, like they're looking for someone, and that he'll then say, "Okay, maybe I would be willing to do it." It wouldn't look right if he just went and said, "Oh, I could fight that place." He'd rather it come from them, so to speak, that they're asking, and then he'll sort of say, "Okay, maybe I would, maybe I'll do it, or definitely I'll be willing to do it." David spoke to the men, so David asked them to repeat, "What is this thing?" So in verse 27, so the people told him regarding this matter, saying, "Such and such shall be done for the man who kills him, this Plishti, this Goliath." Now, there is another way of explaining it, that David HaMelech says, what will be done for the man who removes the disgrace? What more is there? What reward is more than just removing the disgrace from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised, this Arel, this uncircumcised Plishti, who's disgracing the battalions of living Israel? Like, we don't need a reward. Just the fact to remove this disgrace, that itself would be the reward. Now, the verse continues, and verse 28. And here, this takes us really back to an earlier story that we mentioned, that Eliav, who was the oldest of Yishai's children, Eliav is now gonna get angry. And Vayishma Eliav Ochiv Hagadol, Eliav, verse 28, Eliav, his older brother, heard as he was talking to the men, and Eliav became angry with David and said, "Why do you come here? And with whom do you leave those few sheep in the wilderness?" You're just coming and you're dropping your responsibility. You have a responsibility to watch the sheep. "I am aware of your willingness and your evil thoughts, that you have come down here in order to watch the fighting." David replied, "What have I done now? What was it not mere talk? I'm just offering, like I didn't do anything wrong. What are you, and the truth is that Yishai was the one who sent him. So Eliab is thinking that he's coming here because he's neglecting his obligations, right? He's supposed to be taking care of the sheep. And in truth, David came because his father sent him. But the fact is, he was disqualified from becoming king. He misjudged David, and he got angry. And David HaMelech, doesn't really fight back. He just says, I haven't done anything. And so the verse continues, and David replied, "What have I done?" Right. In verse 30, he then turned away from him toward someone else and said the same thing to him. And the people answered him as before. And what this means is that, David HaMelech did not look like he's going to win this big, huge professional giant and warrior. And who is David? The words David was saying became heard, and people related them to Shaul. So now the king finds out that David is willing to fight the Plishtim. And Shaul summons David, and he summoned David. David said to Shaul, "Let no man lose heart because of him, because of this guy. Your servant will go forth and fight the Plishtim." But Shaul said to David, "You cannot go forth to the Plishtim to fight with him, for you are a lad, while he is a warrior from his youth." And King Shaul is nervous to send David to let him fight. He's, this is quite a life and death situation. And how does David even begin to think? So David said to Shaul, "Your servant was a shepherd for his father among the flocks. The lion and the bear would come and carry off a sheep from the flock, and I would go after it, strike it down, and rescue the sheep from its mouth. If it would attack me, I would grab onto its beard and strike it and kill it. Your servant has slain even lion and bear, and this uncircumcised Plishti should be like one of them, for he has disgraced the battalions of the living God." And what he's mentioning is the fact that Hashem is living, and this man is desecrating Hashem's name, and I have Hashem's help on my side. Now, what's interesting here is it says there's a word here that we read one way, but it's written another way, or questionable. The word "seh," according to one other version, is "zeh." Very rare to have this, but there are. This is a instance where it's either "zeh" or "seh." And "zeh" would mean this Eder, in other words, this. I'm sorry, not. Either David carried the sheep. In verse 34, that a bear would carry off a sheep, or a lion would carry off a sheep from the flock, or it means they would carry this off from the flock. So what would it mean, this? What was David pointing at? He was pointing at something. He was pointing at his coat, that he had the sheepskin, and he was telling Shaul, "This is what I saved from the lion." And he's pointing to the sheepskin, the sheep that he made the sheepskin from, to always remember that miracle that God allowed him, gave him the strength to kill a lion, and he made that sheepskin into a and that he used, that I guess that he wore, his garment that he made from that sheepskin, and he was saying the word zeh, this is what I saved from the lion or from the bear. And so what King David is saying, and Rashi brings this interesting point, that there were two people who always remembered the miracle that Hashem did for them. And they felt that that miracle was a sign that they're going to be successful later. And those two people was Mordechai and David HaMelech. When David HaMelech saw that God gave him the ability to kill a lion, to kill a bear, David HaMelech said, Hashem is telling me something. And what that means, that Hashem is telling him, is that he is going to have the ability in the future to kill, to be a warrior. He's going to have that. Hashem is hinting him something, that he's going to be a king, or he's going to be able to win wars. And the same thing was with David, with Mordechai, that Mordechai said, there must be some reason that Esther was chosen to have to live with this lowlife, with this uncircumcised individual. Why was Esther chosen? Why was this miracle happen that she would be chosen? It's not for nothing. And Mordechai remembered that and said, it must be that she is going to save the Jewish people in a time of distress. Yes, David.
Yeah, I was going to say on verse 26, but I thought it's totally unrelated. But since you brought it up, where it says on verse 26, David says, what will be done for the man who will slay this Philistine, Goliath? So it reminded me, what will be done for the man? This is what Achashverosh said to Haman. What should be done for the man who does this for the king? And he thought he was talking about himself. He was talking about Mordechai. I wonder if it's the same wording in Hebrew. I don't know. But that phrase stood out.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, it's along the same lines, like what type of reward should be done. Interesting, very interesting that it's yeah, exactly the same words. Okay, I have to think if there's any more close connection, but that's interesting because now also we're connecting it with Mordechai, David HaMelech and Mordechai. So that is interesting, right? Okay, so in any event, what this means to tell us is that Hashem sometimes sends us hints by giving us some miracle, but he's hinting to us something for the future. And these two tzaddikim that Hashem gave these hints and they remembered it, they thought about this. In other words, when you have a miracle happen for you, you should really think of how you're going to be able to utilize this. You know, there's something that Hashem is telling you and that you should think about it. That's what David and Mordechai did. They thought about this for the future. And this is how David understands it, that Hashem was telling him that he will win this Goliath. In other words, he was thinking maybe, who knows what it means. Now that the story presents itself with Goliath, that Goliath wants someone to fight him, David says, well, I killed the lion, I killed the bear. Let me kill this, let me kill Goliath. I can kill Goliath. In other words, now he's catching on and saying, oh, I guess I'll be able to fight this. Maybe this is meant for me. This is what Hashem was telling me. So Shaul said to David, go and may Hashem be with you. And in other words, after he heard what David answered him, he sort of agreed. He said, okay, may Hashem be with you. Now, Shaul dressed David with his own battle garments. So Shaul takes off his battle garments and puts it on David HaMelech. He put a copper helmet on his head and dressed him in armor. And David then girded his sword over his battle garments, but he was unwilling to go forth that way, for he was not accustomed. So David said to Shaul, I cannot walk with these, for I am not accustomed, to them. And David removed them from on himself. Now, what was really happening here? So there's a very, very important medrash in Vayikra, the Medrash Rabbah. The medrash says here that David, when Shaul put on his own armor onto David, Shaul, we know, was a very tall man. And when David put it on, all of a sudden, it shrunk to David's size. Now, when Shaul saw this, he almost had a heart attack because he realized that this man is meant to wear king garments. This is my competition. And immediately he had this evil eye, this negative thought about David. And David caught on to that. He saw what was going through Shaul's mind. And he quickly removed the garments. And he said, no, I don't need this. I can't wear it. I'm not used to it. And that jealousy that Shaul felt, David saw, he recognized, and he immediately said, no, it's not for me, this garment. Now, the other explanation here, and that's a very powerful story, but the other explanation here is that David HaMelech wanted that it should be very clear that this was a miracle. And he felt that if he wore the garment, it wouldn't reveal the miracle as much as he wanted it to reveal the greatness of Hashem, the power of Hashem. And he was so convinced that Hashem was going to help him that he did not want to wear these garments. And this is from the Targum, one of the other explanations. The verse continues that he took his staff. We're in verse 40. He took his staff in his hand and picked out 5 smooth stones from the brook and put them in his shepherd's bag and in the knapsack.